The Tolkien Road, Episode 136, The Lord of the Rings, The Grey Havens.
Alright, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 the Tolk
Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, a long walk through Middle-earth. On this episode, we conclude our journey through The Lord of the Rings with Book 6, Chapter 9, The Grey Havens. Before we get started, please head on over to iTunes and leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback. It's a great way to show your support for the show and takes less than a minute. You can also stop by TolkienRoad.com, learn about previous episodes, and say hey. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TolkienRoad and on Twitter via @TolkienRoad. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome to the Tolkien Road. Episode 136, Lord of the Rings, Book 6, Chapter 9, The Grey Havens. Long last chapter of Lord of the Rings.
Very last.
Yes.
I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
What a journey it's been.
I know, for real. You know, I mean, that's like, we've done more episodes than this, but this book is, hold on. Well, all the chapters aren't listed in here. It's a lot of chapters.
It is a lot of chapters.
Somewhere around 60, I think.
Okay, that sounds about right. Yeah.
It averages about 10 per book, and there's 6 books. So, yeah, you know, it has been quite a journey. Special thanks to our executive producers, Dr. William Hutton and Justine Lloyd, as well as our other generous patrons. If you'd like to contribute to the Tolkien Road, please visit us on patreon.com/TolkienRoad or TolkienRoad.com.
Yeah.
So, so...
That rain is really loud.
It is loud.
That's what you guys are hearing. It's downpouring here in Franklin, Tennessee.
Kind of appropriate, right? He has to travel through the...
You're right.
Has to travel through the curtain of rain to get to Valinor.
Yes.
There at the end. So,
yes. Good point. Good point.
Right on. So let's just jump on in.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's rock it.
So we pick up at the end of the Scouring of the Shire. Saruman has been defeated and killed by Wormtongue. So the Shire, at least, is back on the right track, although there's still a lot of cleanup to do.
Yeah. That Sharky, he made a mess of things. He
did. The first, and so we're able to catch up with some folks and find out how they're doing. The first is, of course, old Fatty Bolger, right? Fatty, a.k.a. Fredegar, right? Fatty, it's interesting, had been, he had been the one that had gone with, he had set out with, make sure I get this right. So, at first it was Frodo, Sam, and Pippin that set out, and they met up with Merry and Fatty, I believe. I think I have that right.
Oh, at the very beginning?
Yeah. Right. So Fatty was like the fifth wheel, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That didn't get to go with them.
Yeah.
So he stayed behind, and he had been taken when the ruffians smoked out a band of rebels that he led from their hidings up in the Brockenbors by the hills of Skerry. So he's actually Fatty. He's actually, it says Fatty no longer, because he's been kind of starved.
He's been a prisoner.
Yeah.
Of war.
In fact, he's too weak to walk when they carry him out.
Yeah.
So, and he's surprised. He sees Pippin, and he's like, "Who's this young giant with the loud voice?" Right.
Yeah.
So, and of course, then there's Lobelia.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So.
I thought this part was sweet.
Well, go ahead. Why?
Well, I was just gonna say that it said that I just loved it described that it says she was quite touched by the welcome. Apparently there was lots of clapping and cheering when she appeared, and she said that she was quite touched and drove away in tears. She had never in her life been popular before.
Yes.
So sweet.
Yes, but unfortunately, she finds out that her son Lotho was murdered,
Yes.
and she's not able to return to Bag End, so she gives it back to Frodo, and unfortunately she dies the next spring. She's just kind of heartbroken, I guess, at
Right.
the death of her son. So
Yeah.
it was nice though, at least, that they
Understandably.
were able to give her a warm welcome when she was, when they
Unless she
when they
had died
rescued
in
her
the
from the
prison.
cell. That's right.
Yeah.
So, it says she had left all that remained of her money and of Lotho's for him to use in helping hobbits made homeless by the Troubles, so that feud was ended. And then Will Whitfoot, who had been the mayor, he had been in the Lockholes longer than any. He needed a lot of feeding up before he could look the part of mayor. So Frodo agreed to act as his deputy until Mr. Whitfoot was in shape again. So he is made the mayor again.
Mm-hmm.
And while there is a lot of work to do, it doesn't take nearly as long as they had expected, as they kind of thought, right? You see that big mess, and somehow when people really put their minds and wills to it, what can seem like a huge mess suddenly isn't, as much as they thought it was. So it says, and eventually they have they're able to find great stores of food and goods and food and beer, and
lots of leaf.
That's right. So things are starting to get back to normal in the Shire. So yeah, that's good news. That's good news. Now, one of the problems is, of course, that they cut down all these trees, all these beautiful trees, and there's no way to just make new trees, right?
Takes
like
time.
You can't just build trees back.
Right.
So it, at least in those days, I don't know, they could probably do that today, but in those days there was no way to to rebuild a tree just from scratch like that.
Right.
So at that, Sam, it says he grieved over this more than anything else. For one thing, this hurt would take long to heal, and only his great-grandchildren, he thought, would see the Shire as it ought to be. But it says, then suddenly one day, for he had been too busy for weeks to give a thought to his adventures, he remembered the gift of Galadriel. He brought the box out and showed it to the other travelers, and asked for their advice. So he opens it, and
I don't remember him getting this box.
he got it from Galadriel.
I know, but I just don't remember him getting it.
Well, he did. He got it.
Okay.
I mean, what do you want me to say?
I don't know. I'm just remind me where.
Well, when she was giving gifts to everybody?
Yeah, but I thought he got something more practical, like a sword or something. No.
I mean, he may have gotten more than one. I think he got more than one thing.
Was it when they were on the river? They were getting ready to leave in their boat.
I think so.
Okay.
That's what I assume.
Okay.
Unless I'm missing something.
No, you're okay. I just didn't remember. So, anyway, moving on.
It says he brought the box out. Or I'm sorry. It was filled with a gray dust, soft and fine, in the middle of which was a seed, like a small nut with a silver shell. "What can I do with this?" said Sam. "Throw it in the air on a breezy day and let it do its work," said Pippin. "On what?" "Choose one spot as a nursery and see what happens to the plants there," said Mary. "But I'm sure the lady would not like me to keep it all for my own garden, now so many folk have suffered," said Sam. "Use all the wits and knowledge you have of your own, Sam," said Frodo, "and then use the gift to help your work and better it. And use it sparingly. There is not much here, and I expect every grain has value." So Sam planted saplings in all the places where specially beautiful or beloved trees had been destroyed, and he had put a grain of the precious dust in the soil at the root of each. He went up and down the Shire in this labor. But if he paid special attention to Hobbiton and Bywater, no one blamed him. And at the end, he found that he still had a little of the dust left. So he went to the 3-farthing stone, which is as near the center of the Shire as no matter, and cast it in the air with his blessing. The little silver nut he planted in the party field where the tree had once been, and he wondered what would come of it. All through the winter he remained as patient as he could, and tried to restrain himself from going round constantly to see if anything was happening. So,
as does every gardener.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in the spring, things surpassed his wildest hope. Do you want to read that little bit there?
Yeah, spring surpassed his wildest hopes. His trees began to sprout and grow as if time was in a hurry and wished to make 1 year do for 20. In the party field, a beautiful young sapling leaped up. It had silver bark and long leaves and burst into golden flowers in April. It was indeed a malorn?
Mm-hmm.
A malorn, and it was the wonder of the neighborhood. In after years, as it grew in grace and beauty, it was known far and wide, and people would come long journeys to see it. The only Malorn west of the mountains and east of the sea, and one of the finest in the world.
So,
That's
you know,
a specific, species.
Well, I
of
think
tree
it's a tree of
of Lothlorien.
of Lothlorien.
Got it.
Right. I mean, I don't know if it's a specific one in our world. I thought maybe we looked this up. No, I don't think so. We looked up another kind of tree. But let's see here. Malorn. What does Google have to say here? I think it's just a Middle Earth tree.
Okay, it grew in Valinor.
Yes.
Okay. Alright. So it's a special tree. It's not everywhere.
Right.
It's not like an oak or a maple.
That's right.
Got it.
So moving on. So things are starting to look up in the Shire. It's some time has passed since the scouring of the Shire now, and things are starting to seem a bit happier. And then Sam goes and marries Rosie.
Big surprise.
Right.
Not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, totally.
Didn't see that one coming, but Sam marries Rosie, and
they move in with Frodo.
that's right. And Frodo, it says a little bit further on. It says Frodo and Sam, however, went back to ordinary attire, except that when there was need, they both wore long gray cloaks, finely woven and clasped at the throat with beautiful brooches. And Mr. Frodo wore always a white jewel on a chain that he often would finger.
So they're comparing Frodo and Sam to Merry and Pippin, right?
Right.
Because Merry and Pippin ride around with their mail coats and their mail shirts and looking all knightly and chivalrous and stuff.
That's right.
But Sam and Frodo don't. I thought that was funny that Merry and Pippin did that. It's like they just want everybody to know how awesome they are and where they've been and what they've done.
Yeah.
Whereas Sam and Frodo are just content to just not have any attention whatsoever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that gets to the point of what comes next. So, all things now went well, with hope always of becoming still better, and Sam was busy and as full of delight as even a hobbit could wish. Nothing for him marred that whole year, except for some vague anxiety about his master. Frodo dropped quietly out of all the doings of the Shire, and Sam was pained to notice how little honor he had in his own country. Few people knew or wanted to know about his deeds and adventures. Their admiration and respect were given mostly to Mr. Meriadoc and Mr. Peregrine, and if Sam had known it, to himself. Also in the autumn there appeared a shadow of old troubles. One evening Sam came into the study and found his master looking very strange. He was very pale, and his eyes seemed to see things far away. "What's the matter, Mr. Frodo?" said Sam. "I am wounded," he answered. "Wounded. It will never really heal." But then he got up, and the turn seemed to pass, and he was quite himself the next day. It was not until afterwards that Sam recalled that the date was October the 6th. 2 years before, on that day, it was dark in the dell under Weathertop. So it would seem that on the anniversary of his being stabbed at Weathertop, he has a difficult time. So, but this is interesting to me because you think about Merry and Pippin, and Merry and Pippin can both be so Pippin can be like, I rode with, Pippin can be like, I am a, what do you call it?
Steward.
Like I'm a, he's a squire of the
squire. That's the word.
Squire of the King of Gondor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Merry can talk about his, being there at the charge of the Riders of Rohan. Right. So they're both engaged in these big battles, and they serve these great kingdoms of men. Mm-hmm. But Frodo, how does he explain
what he
did?
Yeah.
Well,
he only destroyed the Ring of Evil so that you could all live in peace from Sauron.
But it's such a, for hobbits.
Well, I know, they can't wrap their brain around that. Yeah, it's a little too, maybe, what's the word? Ethereal, maybe?
Yeah.
It's just a little...
Ethereal.
Yeah,
urethral is not a word, by the way.
You know what I meant.
It's close to urethral, but I'm not sure why you're trying to say that.
The nurse in me coming out.
Yeah.
Okay. Ethereal. Yeah. It's almost too fantastical for them to really wrap their brain around.
Right.
Especially because none of them knew about the ring, right? They didn't know about the Dark Tower. They didn't know about
Right.
Mount Doom. They just kind of lived in their little...
Wait, so you took a ring and you dropped it into a volcano?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Really? That's hard?
Yeah.
Why would you do that if it was a pretty ring?
Yeah, I mean, they can talk, I guess, about some of the things they've done, and but I mean, Frodo's been stabbed, stung. I mean, obviously Frodo was the guy who destroyed the ring, but even Sam did cool. I mean, Sam was the one that took on Shelob.
Right,
Right?
fought Shelob, yeah.
Sam could be like, I took on a
and
giant
fought
spider,
orcs
right?
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I mean, it just goes to show that Frodo, there's no way he could have been successful without the people around him.
But even still, just to think the sacrifice that Frodo made, and I think Sam probably underestimates the due that people give Frodo, and it says they underestimate the due they give to him as well. At least he's unaware that they give, they really look at him in a much more exalted way than he realizes. And the same is probably true of Frodo, but for Sam, nothing is good enough for what Frodo did, rightly so. I mean, Frodo did, carried the main burden,
Yeah,
right, all this way.
Yeah. But I don't think there's many people outside of the Fellowship that can truly appreciate
Right.
what he did. They weren't
There's
privy.
certainly not many hobbits.
No, they weren't privy to the council
Well, none of them know who Sauron is,
Right.
right?
Right, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of them. Now they probably have some sense of who the Black Riders were, but I don't know. Even so, the Sauron and this strange ring of power. How do you how do you explain that to hobbits? So,
Yeah.
But Frodo, it doesn't really seem to matter that much to Frodo. But even so, he's wounded. He doesn't seem he's having a rough time on the 2-year anniversary of his of the attack at Weathertop. So shortly thereafter, Sam and Rosie have a little girl and they name her Eleanor.
Mm-hmm.
And
she was born on March 25th.
That's right. Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
Which is the same day that the ring was destroyed a year before.
Which is also the date of the Annunciation.
That's right.
So I thought that was interesting. I was kind of trying to figure out what the significance of this is. I totally get the significance of the ring being destroyed on the 25th, right? Because that's the day that salvation is born, right? But I was just trying to figure out, there's obviously got to be some significance to Eleanor being born on this date.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't see...
No, I don't know.
There's
don't
not a
think too hard
huge
about it. I don't
coincidence
think
or
there's,
significance? Okay.
I mean, maybe there is if you dig deeper, but I wasn't coming in prepared to say anything about it.
Okay, alright. I was just curious. I didn't know if there was more there than I was getting. No. Anyway,
Not that I can think of. If anybody else that knows of anything, let us know. When Eleanor is nearly 6 months old, in late 1421, which is, that's in the Shire reckoning.
Right.
Frodo tells Sam that Bilbo is coming up on his 131st birthday.
That's pretty impressive.
Right, and he'll pass the Old Took. And
competition.
That's right. And Frodo asks Sam to go on a journey with him. Right, he wants to go on a little journey with him. Not too far. He'll be back in a fortnight. So Sam gets permission to go, and he and Frodo set out. But before they do, Frodo gives Frodo gives to Sam the red book that he's been working on, that he and Bilbo had been working on.
Right.
It says, let me make sure I got that right. So in the next day or two, Frodo went through his papers and his writings with Sam, and he handed over his keys. There was a big book with plain red leather covers. Its tall pages were now almost filled. So yeah, Frodo is giving this book to Sam, and I think I missed the part where where Frodo tells Sam that he's going away. So he says I wish I could go with you to Rivendell, Mr. Frodo, and see Mr. Bilbo, and yet the only place I really want to be in is here. I am that torn in two. Poor Sam, it will feel like that, I'm afraid, but you will be healed. You were meant to be solid and whole, and you will be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's almost like he's saying that that's what is meant for Sam, but not for him.
Right.
That's like he's juxtaposing his future with Sam's. Where Sam is meant to, stay the course and be healed and live this new life with Rosie and Eleanor and, whatever other children are to come.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but that's not what's in store for Frodo.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing, I just realized that there's 80 chapters in this book. And I'm trying to think if you add the chapters and...
There's how many?
80. There's 80 chapters in the book that they're talking about.
Oh,
right?
I see.
So, if you add the chapters in The Hobbit, which are 19, and then you add, let's see, Fellowship has 22, so that's 41.
So wait, what
Two Towers.
Oh, you're adding up all the chapters in the... I see. Okay.
41. Two Towers has 21, so that's 62. And then... Move your feet.
Move my feet.
62. And then there's 19 in this one, so that would be 81. So I wonder if not counting this one, that would be 80, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder if there's any significance to that he put 80 chapters in this book.
That's really
right?
interesting. Didn't we talk about how many chapters were in the whole series at the beginning of the episode and we didn't know?
Yeah, but
But now we figured it out. That's kind of funny. That's really, there's gotta be a significance to that. Yeah.
Anyway, neat.
So
I
maybe
hadn't
this
thought of
last
that.
chapter was not included
in
the Red Book.
Right. I mean, it says...
Well, no, there were some left. There were some blank pages left for Sam.
Right.
To write.
Right, but this would be chapter 81, what we're reading now, if my math is correct.
Right.
If my calculations are correct, then...
Then you get a degree in nuclear engineering for nothing.
Right.
Well, no, that makes sense then, that this chapter that we are currently discussing would not be included in the Red Book.
Yeah.
So.
But it says chapter 80 was unfinished. So that would be the Scouring of the Shire, you'd think. But anyway.
Maybe you added wrong.
Maybe. Maybe I'm bad at math.
Maybe I'll just Google it real quick.
No. What are you doing?
I'm Googling.
No, don't Google it.
What? Why not?
Googling's for losers.
What are you doing right now? The only difference is what we're Googling. I mean, on what device we're Googling.
Let's see here.
Got it.
What?
Oh, shoot. I accidentally Googled Lord of the Flies.
Alright, there's 22 in Fellowship. There are 21 in Two Towers, which makes 43. And then there are 19 in Return of the King, which makes
62.
And then if you go back...
Wait, what's the other thing you were going to add in? Oh, The Hobbit.
Yeah. 62 plus 19. Yeah, it's 19.
It is,
so
that's 81.
That's 81. I'm going to look in here and see if Hammond and Skull have anything to say about it.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Do you want me to do a sing and dance while we...
No, we're talking.
Are we?
This is all part of the adventure.
Okay.
Just doing a little...
Right on.
Just doing a little live research. It's all good.
Okay.
We had a thought, so Why not? Why you got to be all critical? Why you got to be like...
Okay,
here we go. It was divided into chapters, but chapter 80 was unfinished. The volume Frodo gave Sam was meant to include only Frodo, not Bilbo's translation from the taken together. The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings contain 81 chapters. This total is the sum of the 19 chapters of The Hobbit and the 62 of the Lord of the Rings. The sticking point is the statement in the present text. Chapter 80 was unfinished. For it seems logical to infer that Frodo had completed his portion of the account up to the time that he gives the volume to Sam, who in turn will write the rest of the final chapter. By the same token, it does not seem logical to suppose that Frodo wrote only part of the 80th chapter, which recounts events in which he took part. In Sauron Defeated, Christopher Tolkien notes that in successive versions of the text, his father changed the number of chapters from 77 to 72 to 80. It is not clear what Tolkien had in mind or if he miscounted, a possibility made more likely by the fact that in draft form some chapters were conjoined and only later separated. Or it may be that 80 is meant to refer to the original Red Book, but not to the work Tolkien edited or translated. In fact, Tolkien's source for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is said in the prologue to be later copies and extracts, not the actual Red Book begun by Bilbo and Frodo and completed by Sam. The abandoned epilogue seems to confirm the view that only a little of the manuscript was left for Sam to write. So
interesting.
There's something going on with that, but it's not entirely clear. But it's an interesting note.
It is a very interesting note. No, a very...
It's just important to remember that in the prologue, like they said, Tolkien talks about himself as being the editor of this,
of the Red Book.
Of the Red Book, right? And that's the work he's doing here. So he's not the original writer, which is just a kind of an interesting thing he does. Obviously the book is by him, but in the kind of creative world that he's spinning, there's kind of this multiple levels of reality, right? So
yeah,
kind of neat.
So maybe when he edited it, he just divided one chapter into another. Like he made an extra chapter that wasn't there to start with.
I think it's supposed to be close to it. I don't know if he just forgot to recount the chapters at the very end.
No.
Or it could be that maybe he intended that the Scouring of the Shire was like the last, that Sam picked it up at the end of the Scouring of the Shire, and then the last chapter is all Sam's.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. Could be. Could definitely well be.
Yeah.
Lots of different possibilities.
Yeah.
But there is obviously a connection of some sort.
Well, interesting. Check this out, though. At the end of the Scouring of the Shire, it says Frodo looked at, so it says Frodo looked down at the body with pity and horror. So Frodo has this thing, and then it cuts to the last couple of sentences, and it's a dialogue between Sam, Merry, Frodo, and Sam, right? Sam has the final word in that chapter. I shan't call at the end till we've cleared up the mess, said Sam gloomily, and that'll take a lot of time and work. So it's almost, I wonder if Frodo, if it implies that Frodo's final word is the death of Saruman, and Sam kind of picks it up from there, right?
Oh.
I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of running with a lot of conjecture on this, but that's one way of looking at it.
It is, you're right.
Is that Sam put the finishing touches on chapter 80 with just a couple of words, and then started his own new chapter to really finish it off.
Yeah, that could very well be.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yeah. Good discussion. I like it.
All right. So on the September the 21st, they set out on their journey. Frodo on the pony that had borne him all the way from Minas Tirith and was now called Strider, and Sam on his beloved Bill. It was a fair, golden morning, and Sam did not ask where they were going. He thought he could guess.
So he thinks they're going to Rivendell?
I think, I don't think it actually says, but I don't think it says what Sam was thinking. But they set out, and Sam hears Frodo singing quietly to himself the old walking song. Still round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate, and though I oft have passed them by, a day will come at last when I shall take the hidden paths that run west of the moon and east of the sun. And as if in answer, from down below, coming up the road out of the valley, voices sang, A Elbereth Gilthoniel, Celivrin Penamiriel, O Menel Aglar Elanath, Gilthoniel, A Elbereth. We still remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, the starlight on the western seas. Frodo and Sam halted and sat silent in the soft shadows until they saw a shimmer as the travelers came towards them. So, coming up on them is Elrond, Galadriel, some other elves, and Bilbo.
Mm-hmm.
So Bilbo is with them. Galadriel smiles at Sam, says, "Well, Master Samwise, I hear and see that you have used my gift well. The Shire shall now be more than ever blessed and beloved." Sam bowed, but found nothing to say. He had forgotten how beautiful the lady was. And of course, Galadriel, it makes note that Galadriel has Ninya, the ring of Mithril that she wears, right? A single white stone flickering like a frosty star. And Bilbo sees them and is proud to announce that he's passed the old Took today.
Yes.
So,
I win.
that's right.
Yes. And then Sam realizes, or he thinks to ask, "Where are you going, Master?" cried Sam, though at last he understood what was happening. "To the Havens, Sam," said Frodo. "And I can't come." "No, Sam, not yet anyway, not further than the Havens. Though you, too, were a ring-bearer, if only for a little while. Your time may come. Do not be too sad, Sam. You cannot be always torn in two. You will have to be one and whole for many years. You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do." "But," said Sam, and tears started in his eyes, "I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire, too, for years and years, after all you have done." "So I thought, too, once. But I have been too deeply hurt, Sam. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger. Someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. But you are my heir. All that I had and might have had, I leave to you. And also you have Rose, and Eleanor, and Frodo lad will come, and Rosie lass, and Mary, and Goldilocks, and Pippin, and perhaps more than that I cannot see. Your hands and your wits will be needed everywhere. You will be the mayor, of course, as long as you want to be, and the most famous gardener in history, and you will read things out of the Red Book, and keep alive the memory of the age that is gone, so that people will remember the great danger, and so love their beloved land all the more. And that will keep you as busy and as happy as anyone can be, as long as your part of the story goes on. Come now, ride with me."
So, great line there. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger. Someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. So, Frodo's come to realize that, ultimately it was he didn't set on this mission so that he could come back and live happily ever after in the Shire, right?
Right.
He's too wounded.
He's broken.
Yeah, too broken. It's kind of strange thought to have. You'd think that he would come back to the Shire and it would be this like happy place for him after all he's been through. He's got his house back that he thought he'd never have back, right? Yeah, it's, I don't know. What do you think? Why can't he stay in the Shire? Do you think?
I kind of struggled with that too as I was reading this. I think that I feel like it all. He keeps talking about being wounded. He's been too deeply hurt, and and all that. You think about all the trouble he has on the anniversary of being stabbed. I feel like it just has to go like. Whatever that the evil that was in that blade just went too deep. Like there's just enough in him now that he can't stay where he can't be at home because he knows, because he's not the same person that he was when he was there before. The Shire has stayed the same, but he has changed.
Right.
And so he just can't be at home there anymore. He's seen too much, done too much, been hurt too much.
So I'll go ahead and read this. This is from, again, I'm pulling this from Hammond and Skull. and they make this note. So Tolkien explained in his draft letter to Eileen Elgar, September 1963, to quote Tolkien, "Alas, there are some wounds that cannot be wholly cured," said Gandalf. "Not in Middle-earth. Frodo was sent or allowed to pass over sea to heal him, if that could be done before he died. He would have eventually to pass away. No mortal could or can abide forever on earth or within time. So he went both to a purgatory and to a reward for a while, a period of reflection and peace and a gaining of truer understanding of his position in littleness and in greatness, spent still in time amid the natural beauty of Arda unmarred, the earth unspoiled by evil. Bilbo went too, no doubt as a completion of the plan due to Gandalf himself. Gandalf had a very great affection for Bilbo, from the Hobbit's childhood onwards. His companionship was really necessary for Frodo's sake. It is difficult to imagine a Hobbit, even one who had been through Frodo's experiences, being really happy even in an earthly paradise, without a companion of his own kind, and Bilbo was the person Frodo most loved. But he also needed and deserved the favor on his own account. He bore still the mark of the ring that needed to be finally erased, a trace of pride and personal possessiveness. As for reward for his part, it is difficult to feel that his life would be complete without an experience of pure elvishness, and the opportunity of hearing the legends and histories in full, the fragments of which had so delighted him. Such a journey would at first seem to Frodo something not necessarily to be feared, even as something to look forward to, so long as is undated and postponable. His real desire was Hobbit-like and human-like, just to be himself again and get back to the old familiar life that had been interrupted. Already on his journey back from Rivendell, he suddenly saw that that was not for him possible. Hence his cry, "Where shall I find rest?" From the onset of the first sickness, Frodo must have been thinking about sailing, though still resisting a final decision, to go with Bilbo or to go at all. It was no doubt after his grievous illness in March 3020 that his mind was made up. And then Tolkien later spells out Frodo's ultimate fate. Mortals, he said, can only dwell in Aman for a limited time, whether brief or long. The Valar had neither the power nor the right to confer immortality upon them. Their sojourn was a purgatory, but one of peace and healing, and they would eventually pass away, die at their own desire and of free will, to destinations of which the elves knew nothing. So basically, in one word, purgatory. Frodo is going to Valinor for purposes of purgatory, as is Bilbo, right? They're both going there, and that's the reason. Gandalf, of course, and the elves are going for different reasons, right? Their natural home is Aman, right? They're returning after their various missions are done. But yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I think there's more to it than that. I think it would be a good question to explore sometime. Just like why couldn't Frodo go home? I think it's a really like.
Why couldn't he have done his purgatory in the Shire?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something about his wound, the wounds that he received.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost like he had to. Like it wasn't just that he had to destroy the ring. Like he actually had to give up the Shire. Like that was part of the deal, in order to save it.
Yeah.
Not that because that's like an even greater sacrifice, right? It's one thing to go off and say, well, if I succeed in this mission, then at least I'll get to come back home to my home, to the things that I love, right?
Yeah.
But it's another thing altogether to say, if I succeed in my mission, I won't even get to come back to the place that I love, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I don't know. There's like, I don't know. There's a lot that could be said about this. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it and unpack it, but that's the story.
Yeah, but it's weird to me that he, I feel like he's earned in everything that he's been through. I feel like he's done his purgatory, right? I mean, if everything that he's been through isn't purgatory, I don't know what is, I guess.
See, I think, I don't know, I'm straying into territory of which I am not particularly well studied, but here's what I've come. All right, we're Catholic converts. We grew up in and I think, even for most people who grow up Catholic, purgatory is this mysterious idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
For us, it was like, what in the world are you talking about, purgatory, when we were growing up? But over the years of being Catholic, I've really come to see it in a different light than I think it normally gets put in, right? Mm-hmm. Purgatory, for those who don't know, is the Catholic doctrine that for those who die in a state of grace and go to heaven, but still require a process of sanctification, right? Mm-hmm. They will go to purgatory. Purgatory is not the final place. Purgatory is a stopping point on the way to heaven.
Right.
Right.
So if you go to purgatory, it's a good thing.
If you go to purgatory, it's a good thing. You're going to heaven.
Right.
Right.
You just need to be cleaned up first.
Right. So, and I think we often think of purgatory as like, oh, it's just this like miserable. It's like hell light, Yeah. It's like hell light with hope at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that that's entirely true, right?
Well, it's gotta be.
Well, let me finish. You didn't even let me finish.
Fine.
Okay.
Finish.
It's like, I think we sometimes have this caricature of purgatory, that it's this like awful, miserable place, mm-hmm. and mm-hmm. I don't know that that's necessarily true, right? I think it can be, depending on the person who like the state of the person who goes there, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Especially at first, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
I mean, Frodo could have gone to Amon kicking and screaming, right? He could have been like, I want to stay in the Shire, I don't want to go. And, mm-hmm. It's like, okay, you're kind of missing out on this incredible thing, right?
Right.
I think it can be, but I think it's all dependent on your perspective, right? It's a spiritual place, right? Mm-hmm. We're getting kind of deep into what it's all about. And I think, you think about it, like, you're going to be so different through the process, like when you're ready to leave purgatory, mm-hmm. you're going to be so different from who you are when you enter purgatory, that your desires and the things that you hope for and find your fulfillment in are going to be radically different from what you entered in with, right? You're going to be completely, in a lot of ways, a completely different person, right?
Yep. Yeah.
You don't think now, Frodo maybe thinks a little different, because he's been through, to your point, he's been through a lot of trials here, right? Mm-hmm. But I think for us, we think of purgatory, as, oh, it's just this place of misery.
Yeah.
But what are we doing? It's really raising us so that we no longer are like distracted by all these ridiculous shiny objects, right? But that our eyes are finally set on and ready for the glory of God, right? I mean, for the end all be all, right?
Yeah. 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 No, well said. Well said. And that definitely makes that. I would agree. I mean, I feel like most people, myself included, think of purgatory as, hell light, right? Like, just a way of, because how can you be purified and released from all of those material desires and wants and whatnot pleasantly? Like, that can't be pleasant. It just can't be. But that doesn't seem to jive with what Tolkien is doing here, saying that Frodo's going to purgatory. Because I had in my brain that, what is it called again? Where are they going?
Amon.
Yeah.
The Blessed Realm.
Right, the Blessed Realm.
Yeah.
Like, it's paradise.
Yeah.
Is it not?
It's not heaven, though.
No, it's not heaven, but it's nice. It's heaven light, right?
Yes.
So, anyway, I'm just saying that my view of purgatory doesn't seem to, like, when you read that Tolkien said Frodo was going to the Blessed Realm for purgatory, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Because the Blessed Realm is a nice, fun, beautiful place. You can't do purgatory in a nice, fun, beautiful place. But maybe Tolkien is saying that you can. Well, and that's what he thinks purgatory is.
Let's look at...
Dante.
The Purgatorio by Dante.
Okay.
Which, of course, is the second part of the Divine Comedy, following on the Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
So, Purgatory is this mountain there, right? In Dante's conception.
Okay.
And at the top of it is the earthly paradise. At the summit of Mount Purgatory is the earthly paradise or Garden of Eden.
So that's like the very top level of purgatory. That's
In Dante's conception.
right before you get to heaven.
Right. Yes.
Huh.
In Dante's conception. So
Wow.
Tolkien is, I think, of a mind here with
Dante.
right? Let's see. So, I think it makes sense. I mean, I don't think it's, if you live a pretty rotten life here, and just kind of have a deathbed conversion, right? And you're still kind of like, oh, I really didn't wish I did. I don't really want to do this, but okay, like, yeah, you might have a lot of fire to go through in purgatory
before you get
right?
to the top, the mountain.
Right.
Yeah, that
But
makes sense.
If you've been through as much fire as Frodo has,
right,
and as much pain,
okay. Yeah, so he's done most of his purgatory on Earth.
right,
in Middle Earth,
right.
and now he just gets to go boom right to the top level of purgatory.
Yeah, I mean
that makes sense.
Again, I don't think we want to read this too woodenly in that context. Again, this is not, we're not doing an allegory for, for anything, right?
Right.
This is Tolkien's own story, and there's no such thing as purgatory in his world per se, right?
Sure.
He's just making a likening to this, and he's also clarifying that Frodo's final destination is not Aman, right? Frodo will die, as will Bilbo, because they're mortals. Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel will not die, because they are immortals.
So they're going to the Blessed Realm as well. Like they
but
can't return.
that is their final destination.
Right, that is their fun. But they're not. They can't come back.
Right.
Now that they've gone there. So to Bilbo and Frodo, like this isn't normal. This is not a normal destination for hobbits.
No.
So this, you were saying that this was all put together by Gandalf, because he had a special place in his heart for the ring bearers.
Well, that was what was in the.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
But here's the other thought, okay? Because people in so let me go back to purgatory, right?
Okay.
People in purgatory we're supposed to pray for the people in purgatory, but they can also pray for us, right? We can also ask for their prayers, right? Okay. Because they're suffering, right? And when one suffers and offers it up in union with Christ, right? Then that suffering becomes efficacious for more than just themselves, right?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So, here's the thought, Frodo can now go to the Blessed Realm where Manwë and Varda and Yavanna and Aule and Olmo and all the other Valar and the Maiar, right? I mean, Manwë, who has the direct line to Ilúvatar, right?
Right, and ask for prayers.
Ask for healing for the world, right? Can intercede on behalf of the Shire, right?
That's a good thought. Yeah. I would say that there's something to that.
So he has, he's still losing the Shire in order to save it, right? In order to make it stronger.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tolkien had any of this in mind when he was writing this, but I can't help it. I don't think it's a stretch.
No.
Because Tolkien.
Right. What we know of
Tolkien was more Catholic than I am. Right?
Yeah.
He knew this stuff better than I was. He was raised by a priest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by a mother who was a very devout Catholic before the priest. Right.
Right.
So, Tolkien knows all this stuff far better than knew all this stuff far better than I do, and it would not surprise me to learn that all these thoughts were in there for him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
So.
I dig it.
Anyway, and good discussion.
Totally.
All right, so they arrive at Mithlond, the Grey Havens, and they see Círdan the shipwright, going back to the first stage there.
He was in the Silmarillion, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was at the end of the Silmarillion? Was he the one, like, flying?
Yeah, and let me make sure. So Círdan is... Let me see. Wait, no, he wasn't flying. What now?
Huh? Well, he's at the end of the Silmarillion, right?
Yeah, but he's As he was a Cendar, the lord of the Falathrim during the First Age, he was one of the wisest and most foresighted of the elves, and by the Second Age, the oldest known elf in Middle-earth, to remain so throughout that age and the Third Age. He was also awarded Narya one of the three rings until he surrendered it to Gandalf. He was one of the last
and that's
elves...
the ring that Galadriel's now wearing.
No, Gandalf is wearing. It says right there, Greta, until he surrendered it to Gandalf.
Yeah, I know, but...
That was Ninya.
Oh, okay, I got them confused. My bad.
Where did he start out? Anyway, he's always been kind of the sea man, right? He's always hanging out by the sea. So,
right.
All is now ready, he says. Círdan was gray and old, save that his eyes were as keen as stars, and his beard was long. Pippin and Merry show up just as Frodo is about to board the ship. And says Sam was now sorrowful at heart, and it seemed to him that if the parting would be bitter, more grievous still would be the long road home alone. So fortunately, Sam is going to have some company with Merry and Pippin on the way back.
Yeah. I liked what they said here. They said, "You tried to give us the slip once before and failed, Frodo." I think that's what Pippin said.
Yeah.
"This time you have nearly succeeded, but you have failed again. It was not Sam, though, that gave you away this time, but Gandalf himself."
That's right.
I thought that was funny.
Yep. And Gandalf has something to say. "Yes, for it would be better to ride back 3 together than 1 alone. Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea comes the end of our fellowship in Middle-earth. Go in peace. I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are an evil." Then Frodo kissed Merry and Pippin, and last of all Sam, and went aboard. And the sails were drawn up, and the wind blew, and slowly the ship slipped away down the long grey firth. And the light of the glass of Galadriel that Frodo bore glimmered and was lost. And the ship went out into the high sea, and passed on into the west, until at last on a night of rain Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air, and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that as in his dreams in the house of Bombadil, the grey rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. So, again, we got to remember, you can only get to the Blessed Realm if you're allowed there, right? Because it's no longer a part of the earth per se, right?
Yes.
It's been, ever since the downfall of Numenor, it's been actually kind of lifted off of the world, so that it's not, it's not, you can't just sail a ship over to it, right? You have to actually be kind of graced into it, right?
Yeah.
Gifted into it. So Sam, Merry, and Pippin ride back. After standing there on the shore and seeing the ship disappear on the horizon. They ride over the downs and took the east road, and then Merry and Pippin rode on to Buckland, and already they were singing again as they went. But Sam turned to Bywater, and soon came back up the hill as day was ending once more. And he went on, and there was yellow light and fire within, and the evening meal was ready, and he was expected. And Rose drew him in, and he set him in his chair, and put little Eleanor upon his lap. And he drew a deep breath. "Well, I'm back," he said.
And that's that.
That is that. What do you think of the ending?
It feels a bit anticlimactic.
I know. Doesn't it?
It feels like there should be another book after this. Like just Sam, Sam's life with Rosie, and then, Gandalf comes and does fireworks for Eleanor's first birthday, and, stuff like that. But I feel like it's a very appropriate ending. I feel like it's a good ending. I'm satisfied with it. I don't have any questions lingering. I feel like everything was kind of tied up nicely. But yeah, it does kind of feel like. But then again, we've had this long, what's it called? Denouement.
Yes.
So I guess it would have had to be pretty amazing for it not to feel anticlimactic after the long, slow letdown. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting. So I've always kind of liked it. It's to me, it's kind of funny. Like, I mean, you do have this like very emotional parting, and it's like
It
very
was very-
it's
yes.
very curt and kind of funny because it's a little bit jarring, with as much as the rest of the book goes on, right?
Yeah.
But it's like it's very Sam, like it's very Sam appropriate, It's like Sam is getting back down to, like, if you think of Sam as, we think of Frodo as the main protagonist, but if you take a moment and think of Sam as the main protagonist, if you think of Sam's heroic journey in this story, right?
Yes. Yeah.
If you think of Sam's heroic journey in the story, okay?
Right. Yeah.
He goes from being this very simple gardener
Mm-hmm.
to being this, like, guy without whom the ring doesn't get destroyed, right? But he never really changes from being a simple gardener, He never, he's
True.
always a simple gardener, and
Yeah.
and even up into the end, he talks in the ways of the gardener, right? He's like, he doesn't like a bunch of nonsense, and and I think, like, I don't know, I just think, like, the word, it's like, well, yeah, he's back. And, like, who's he talking to when he says that, right? Is he talking to Rosie? Is he talking to himself? Is he happy? Is he sad? Right? I just kind of like the ambiguity of it. Like, there's many levels
Yeah, you're
to
right. You're right.
it.
I'd assumed he was talking to Rosie, but
It's like, okay, I guess now my work in the Shire can kind of get back to normal, right? Things get back to normal for me.
How can it be normal without his best friend, though? Like, it can't be. But, of course, it wasn't the same best friend that he had.
Well, and also, he's married now, so it's not like it was before,
Well, that's true.
right?
That relationship has changed. Yeah, that's true.
So, and you got the whole, like, from the Hobbit there and back again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's just, it's one of those endings that makes you go, And it's interesting, though, because apparently there was an epilogue that was supposed to go on the end of the book originally.
Oh, really?
And
what happened to it?
So here's what it says in Sauron Defeated, one of the History of Middle-earth books. The words that end to Lord of the Rings, "Well, I'm back," were not intended to do so, and my father wrote them in the long first draft manuscript. It is obvious from the manuscript that the text continued on without break, and there is in fact no indication that my father thought of what he was writing as markedly separate from what preceded. The epilogue takes place nearly 15 years later in March 1436. In its first version, written probably in late summer or early autumn 1948, Sam is reading to his children from the Red Book and answering their questions. He tells them that the king is coming north, that they are all to meet him at the Brandywine Bridge and travel with him to his house by Lake Evendim, and he reads them the king's letter to this effect. In the second version of the epilogue, which must date from after 1951, Sam is alone with Eleanor, all the younger children being in bed. Both versions serve to tie up loose ends and to provide information about events subsequent to Frodo's departure. But the epilogue was universally condemned, as Tolkien wrote to Naomi Mitchison, possibly because it was anticlimactic, and Tolkien abandoned it, though he felt the picture to be incomplete without something on Samwise and Eleanor. And it talks a little bit about the New Shadow, which was the sequel that he started and didn't get very far on. But maybe sometime we'll explore the other end, the ending that Tolkien had written for it.
You can still get it?
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, you do have it.
So
Huh.
look out.
Well, that's kind of interesting that I felt like there should be more.
Yeah.
Because I guess there was intended to be more.
Right.
But it's also kind of ironic that this ending feels anticlimactic, and that says that Tolkien abandoned the epilogue because it felt anticlimactic.
I know. Yeah.
But I agree. I feel like, see, that's why I feel like with Eleanor being born on March 25th, which is the same day the ring was destroyed, there has to be more to her story.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's interesting. We'll have to, I think that would make a fun episode.
Yeah, there's actually two versions of it in this chapter. Let's see, just to scan it, because I don't want to go into the whole thing. We'll do a special episode on this one.
Where are you getting this from?
It's in Sauron Defeated, which is one of the History of Middle-earth
Oh,
books.
I see. Okay.
It's chapter 11 and Sauron defeated. And there's 2 versions of the epilogue, and it's basically just Sam and Eleanor, having a conversation about various things.
And she's what, a teenager at this point?
I guess she would be, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know what our listeners think of the ending.
So there's like, what happened to Gimli? I liked him. Where can I have an axe soon? Or this is Frodo. So I guess some of his kids are there as well. Some of his other kids are there as well. When is March 25th, said Pippin, to whom days were still the longest measure of time that could really be grasped. Is it soon? It's a week today, said Eleanor. When shall we start? So yeah, there's it'll be fun to go through this and pick out the interesting stuff in here.
Yeah.
So.
Good call.
All right.
All right.
Let's do a little haiku.
Yes, let's.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 syllables in haiku.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 syllables in haiku.
Alrighty.
All right.
Rock.
I wrote 2. How many did you write?
1.
Well, then maybe I should go first.
All right,
since
fine,
I
go
wrote
first.
2. All right, here's my first one. All is now ready. A final farewell. Weep. Not all tears are evil. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. I liked that little thing by Gandalf where he said, I won't say, do not weep, for all tears are not in evil.
Good stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Let me hear yours.
Alrighty. Excuse me.
Whenever you're done yawning. Jeez. Gee, I don't know.
Past the rain wall. Quiet.
Well, I
Past-
know you're going to stop yawning and start reading. You ready now?
Past the rain wall, white shores and a far green country, Frodo finds his rest.
Nice. I like that.
See if we can do better than that.
Okay, here's my second one. Has everything sad come untrue? Almost, but not quite. Goodbye, Frodo.
Nice.
Yeah, I know, I like that one. I thought it was good. I don't know if it's better, but I think it's just as good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Okay, you know what? I'm just going to say
Pretty
it. It is. It's better. It's better.
Very well. Well, somebody's full of themselves.
All right, we have some, hold on. So we have a note from Matt Scarrance.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Matt. He says, Dear Greta and John, honored walkers of the roads of Middle-earth, we come at last to that time of times when work is ended, but the story still goes on. In honor of this final chapter, here is a poem which I hope you will be able to read on your next episode. And so here we go.
Right on.
Here 'tis. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far away the road leads on, let others follow when they can. Yet we at last to havens gray, our final journey now commence. The weary world now falls away, the road is straight that leads us hence. This road goes ever, ever on, until the Isle of Endless Day. And though we leave our friends beyond, tomorrow they may come this way, and join us forever in healing mirth, in the west of west beyond the sea, from whence comes all the good of earth, the ancient light of gold and silver tree. Dude,
Right
I got
on.
chills.
Awesome.
It's really, really good.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Matt. That was awesome.
Thanks, Matt.
He finishes his note by saying, I cannot wait to begin The Hobbit with you and many more long and good explorations of the legendarium and assorted works of a brilliant Oxford professor, writer, and poet. Your friend at the Final Havens, Matt Scarrance.
Awesome, Matt. We're
Yeah.
looking forward to it, too.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. So I think that was actually our only poem. We, no actual haiku, I guess, from listeners. But we do have a note from Josh.
Josh.
Superfan Josh, he says, hey, Carswells, no haiku this week. Well, then I'm not going to read any further. Okay. Nah, just kidding. But I just wanted to let you two know that I've recently finished reading Tolkien's essay on fairy stories. I've been conducting personal research for my essay on the Wrathful Hero. I have changed several things since you last read the draft, John, starting from the ground up, and thought it may include some interesting interpretations of storytelling and world building. Afterwards, I went and listened to the Tolkien Road episode on said essay, as I never listened to it when it was first released, and found your commentary to be just as fun and insightful. I am hoping to read the poem and then listen to your episode of Mythopoeia in the coming weeks. Until then, I hope all is well, going well with you and your family, and I look forward to the upcoming Return of the King film review.
Right on.
Yeah. So even though Josh didn't send us haiku, he's still been diving deep into the world of Tolkien. So
Awesome.
It's all good.
Well,
yeah.
that's a worthy excuse. I'd rather he'd be reading non-fairy stories than, writing a haiku. So
Right.
I mean, I'd prefer both, but
Yeah, we can't do both. At least
read on fairy stories.
It's a good reason to not get haiku done.
Absolutely.
And we have one more note from a new listener, Travis Lawhead, from Williston, North Dakota.
Hola, Travis.
Hello, Travis. So glad you wrote. He says, hello, John and Greta. I have been binge listening to your podcast at work. Our binge listener. Man, I love our binge listeners. They're the best.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, John. Oh, yeah. So he's been binge listening to our podcast at work when he gets to work alone. He says, I get through around 7 every day, and right now I am just finishing the podcast on The King of the Golden Hall Part 2. Thank you so much for what you do. It makes the work days a lot easier and was a great refresher on the Silmarillion and also the Lord of the Rings books, which I have not read in a while. I love Tolkien and his works on Middle-earth. The Sons of Hurin is a work of Tolkien I would love to hear you guys go through. It's also been a while since I've read it, so I probably need a refresher on that too. I had been listening to another Tolkien podcast, but there were some things about it that bothered me, so I started my quest for another source of Tolkien knowledge. I was so excited when I found your podcast, but not only was it more complete, but it also lines up with my theology. Thank you again for your podcast. It is great, and I believe one that Tolkien himself would like to listen to.
Oh, right on.
That is some high praise right
Awesome,
there.
yeah.
That's so great.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. We're just glad that you love it so much.
Yes, indeed.
That you binge listen.
Yeah, I mean that's what we strive for. We want to be true to his vision. He might get annoyed by some of our joking around and our pop culture references, but
He probably does.
But he lived in a different time. But I think I hope that at least our analysis is up to snuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So thank you, Travis. I really appreciate your kind words.
It's wonderful
Thank you very
hearing
much.
from you. It's nice to know that you're out there and that you're listening
Indeed.
and enjoying what you're hearing.
Yes, indeed. Let's see. We had that's not anything to do with this. Okay, wrong email. All right.
Yes.
Here we go. We also had a note from Clay DeVoe, who is a longtime listener.
Hey, Clay.
He said, hey guys, the conversation about Frodo's refusal to slay Saruman was great. I see it a lot like David's refusal to slay King Saul in 1 Samuel. Saul was the Lord's chosen king, though he was wicked. David felt the weight of Saul's stature and refuses to slay him, even though Saul is trying as hard as he can to kill David. He said to his men, I swear before the Lord, I would never do such a thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed. I will never lift my hand against him, since he is the Lord's anointed. With these words, David persuaded his men, and he did not let them rise up against Saul. That's from the first book of Samuel. So he says, good stuff as usual. Thanks, guys. Good stuff, Clay. Yeah, great point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think there's definitely a parallel there.
Yeah, that's a really good call. I hadn't even
Right.
thought of that, but it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks
Thank
for
you
your
guys.
thanks for your notes, and special thanks to our patrons, our executive producers, Dr. William Hutton and Justine Lloyd, as well as Shannon Stockbridge, Josh Sosa, Brian Orr, Margaret Lyon, Emilio Perea, Zeke Farmer, Caleb Santana, James Applegate, Caitlin Fascista, Matt Scarrance, Al Taylor, Per Brenner, James Lindberg, Chris Loftus, Lawrence McGowan, Richard Wall, Spencer Foger, and Chuck Farnung, who is a new patron.
Oh, awesome.
So, yeah.
Welcome, Chuck. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for your patronage, Chuck. If you would like to join Chuck and the rest of them and be a patron of the Tolkien Road podcast, head on over to patreon.com/TolkienRoad.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you guys.
Greta, high five. Way to get through the whole Lord of the
Woo!
Rings.
Yes. I didn't remember any of it from when I read it last time. So this was fun.
We just spent like 70 hours talking about the Lord of the Rings.
Oh my golly. Can we get into the Guinness Book of World Records?
We just spent like 3 days straight talking about the Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
In full detail. And honestly, there'll probably be a lot more to come. I mean, we'll probably come back and revisit certain things. And now that I have my reader's companion, from Hammond and Skull, there'll probably be different things we look more closely at. And we're going to do the appendices next time.
Oh, is that what's next?
Yeah, we'll do kind of an overview of the appendices, the different things that are contained therein. We got to talk about different parts of the appendices because there's a
lot of appendices.
Well, there's some really interesting specific stuff in there. We're not going to go into detail on all of them next time, but we'll talk about the different parts.
Okay.
And then so there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to this stuff in the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
We're nowhere near done talking about the Lord of the Rings, but we got the Hobbit. We're going to be getting into the Hobbit soon, and after that we'll probably do some unfinished tales. Children of Hurin, and yes, I know I fell behind a little bit on my new book, but it's coming soon. Oh yeah. I really do hope to have something on it soon in the next couple of weeks, at least an announcement for it.
Cool beans.
So yeah, lots more to come.
Yeah, lots to look forward to.
Exciting times.
So this is not an end; it's merely a beginning.
It's merely a beginning, and of course there is. I got to start catching up on all the news with the Tolkien biopics, and then the Lord of the Rings prequel TV show that is coming from Amazon in the not too distant future. So at some point they're going to start making announcements on casting and titles and
we'll have to weigh in on that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So say a prayer for those things. So they're good things, right? So they're things that Tolkien would be happy with.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with us through so much.
Yeah.
We really appreciate every one of our listeners.
Especially
those who have made it this far. Mm-hmm. And we intend to keep going.
Yes, we do.
So,
yeah.
Road goes ever on.
Does indeed.
Right on. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you, guys.
We'll talk at you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Please remember to check out truemyths.org and tolkienroad.com for show notes and plenty of other Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes, and consider supporting us financially via patreon.com/TolkienRoad. On our next episode, we'll explore the appendices of The Lord of the Rings. Please send correspondence to tolkienroadpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, the road goes ever on.